Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia Worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You were joining your host Greg Tompsett on a different night of the week. Aaron Quinn, how's your Friday night?
I'll tell you, Greg, not the best Friday night. We'll get into some of the stuff here that happened here in Buffalo this week. It's been a weird week, right? Yeah. You know me, big time creature of habit, and so not going Wednesday was weird. But I'm glad it started because of your trip. For work, that we weren't going to go Wednesday night, and then I was going to maybe do the show without you, which I hate to do that anyway. And then I'm glad we didn't decide that because my Wednesday night ended up going to total crap. I wouldn't be able to do the show, so I'm glad. Big shout out to the guys of Going Deep podcast, Kevin Masser and Mike Bunt, definitely helping us out. Switching nights is not easy to do if you're a podcast guy, so it was a big shout out to them. But other than that, man, we'll get into it in a little bit. Really weird week. Here in the city of Buffalo. I don't have a lot to say about it. We'll talk about what the Bills were doing, but I do want to just say, to everyone out there that has any type of impact from this, the event that happened over the weekend, my heart goes out to each and every one of you. I don't know what to say anymore. I thought about talking about this because, we've prided ourselves on being a football. You come here, we talk football, but this is so close to home. And the team being a part of this here over the week and getting into the community felt like we have to at least say something. And I'm sort of out of things to say, and anything that I'm going to say, somebody's already said before, but I'm definitely here to listen. So if anyone has anything they want to talk about this, whether how to fix these type of things or just want to talk about it, I'm here for that. And I'm just going to be a listener going forward here because I'm out of things to say, Greg. Like, it's so upsetting to me, and I could ramble on it for hours, but I just want to listen to the people that need it.
Yeah, and I think that we'll focus on the Bills tonight. We're going to focus on the schedule and free agency and some things on the draft and what other free agents are still out there. But it would be, I think inappropriate not to comment quickly on what happened. And I'll give a special shout out to your amazing wife, who I know was part of the response to the incident that happened, and how much time she spent with it, and so many others who did that, including the Buffalo Bills. And not that of course I expected there to be a response and engagement, but to have every single player on the team go and all the coaches, and then you see the next day, both owners fly into town, Roger Goodell coming in with, Bruce Smith and Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and Terrence McGee and a lot of other names you hadn't seen, and that people feeling compelled to want to just reach out and spend time with the people impacted. And I just was appreciative of the fact that it mattered to them that much, and that they felt the need to be there to share in that terrible moment and to share some of that grief and the way that they did it. So I echo exactly what you said. I wish I knew the answer to how to stop these horrible incidents from happening, but I'm open to listen and certainly want to talk to people who have ideas for it. So everyone who was impacted, certainly even you and your kids, more so than might having it, just across town from where you are. I can't imagine that feeling in there. So I feel for everyone who was impacted, and we'll get back to football, but it's certainly something we felt like we needed to mention.
Yeah, and you know what? Kudos to the Bills. And here's a point that I really like to hammer home, because outside of this horrible incident and why that occurred, years ago, the NFL got a lot of grief from people about how they interact, that draw that line between the community and issues and things like that, and what the NFL's role and what players' role are. And I always defended the NFL when there was boycotts and people said, I'm done with the NFL and I don't want any part of this. And I said, man, if you go to any one of these NFL cities, and probably it's no more prevalent than here in Buffalo because that close relationship with the team in the cities, but any of the cities, even ones where the teams aren't that close, the amount of goodwill and community organizing that NFL teams bring into cities, I think is unprecedented. I know other sports do it. The NBA is really good at it too, but I don't know that anyone does it to the degree that the NFL does it. And this is just another example of their ability to roll out and be there for communities. And in Buffalo, I do think they go a step further. I think they want to be a part of it. I think maybe in other cities you get guys that have to do some of this stuff, and that's part of who they are, and they'll do it. But in Buffalo, like you said, you saw older players coming back to also participate in this. But kudos to the NFL, because
players who weren't even at OTAs who flew in just to be part of that response because they were home working on their own.
Yes, and it goes beyond this incident. Those players are involved in these communities and in our community all the time. So shout outs at the NFL, because it's not something they have to do, but it's something that really you can tell genuinely that a lot of these players want to participate with.
So again, just wanted to comment on that. We'll get back to the football piece of it here, but for everyone else who was impacted by this, our thoughts are with you. So,
and hopefully the football side can be an escape here for the next 40 minutes or so, and we can. That's the great thing about sports, right? Is none of it matters, and we can just get back to talking and being distracted.
Speaking of parts of football that don't matter, I read a weird amount about the schedule and all
like this kind of stuff. Though.
Yeah,
this is like your thing.
So obviously, first credit to Warren Sharp and his group, who do amazing analysis over at Sharp Football Analysis and sharpfootball.com. The work that they do going through some of the different pieces. There's just some stuff that stood out to me. Obviously, we already knew the opponents. We already knew the Bills were, when you're a first-place team, you're going to have a first-place schedule, which means you're going to have some challenging, difficult games on there. So the Bills actually have like a middle-of-the-road strength of schedule, and I don't do the previous year's record strength of schedule. That one's really, really wonky. I do think the one that has the Vegas win totals is a little bit more in line, because that takes the things into play, like signings, like draft picks, like trades, and a little more realistic expectations of where those things are. So I like that. And the Bills are 18th in strength of schedule, so kind of middle of the road. So for a first place schedule, not too bad. Everybody knows what a murderer's row the AFC is this year, so not too bad considering where those things go. But a couple of things that stood out, the bye week in week 7 I think is fine. It's not fantastic. I'd prefer it's a bit later, but it was okay. I don't think that was a big one. But the rest that comes with those is what really stood out to me. So in the couple things that Sharp Football played around with, the Bills actually had the most net rest advantage of any team in the league. So they had 12 more days of rest than their opponents over the year. Right. There's one team, the Lions, actually had 0 games with no rest disadvantage, where the other team had more rest than them, and then they had like 4 games with it. The Bills had 4, but they had more days, so that they had more rest than what the Lions did. But those were the top 2. They had 4 games where they had more rest than their opponents, and 2 with less rest. Both of the games that have less rest was only 1 day. It was a Monday nighter going into a game, so only one day.
No opponents off buys.
After years of Bills fans, me being one of the Bills fans, who would, the first thing I look at is who do they play coming off a bye? The Bills play 0 teams off a bye. There were seasons before where the Bills played 3, 4, and 5 teams coming off of a bye, which is obscene. So to have 0 is a nice one to have.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a nice boost because I don't know each individual coach, but there are a number of coaches that have exceptional records too, coming off buys where like
Andy Reid's a famous one.
Yeah, Bill Belichick has typically been a famous one where if you give them 2 weeks to prepare for you, like you're starting behind, you're like going into the game down 10 points. You got to make that up. So
so the couple other pieces that stood out to me, there were 2 other little bits. There's an interesting stretch from a rest standpoint, that one of the biggest short rest pieces is certainly on like short week road games. So if you have short rest and it's on the road, those aren't great. The Bills have 3 of those. I don't love those, but the fact that the worst one is Thanksgiving and that it's Detroit, if you were going to give me all 17 games and picking which team I would take the short week and the worst schedule one, I'd probably pick Detroit. That's probably the most tolerable one. And then I like the way it stacks beyond there. So that's in week 12. And then they kind of take advantage of that by going 1 week later, where the Patriots also play short rest against Minnesota that night on Thanksgiving. We then play them on Thursday night the next week. So a regular 1 week stretch there. And then week 13 into 14, they kind of get that mini bye coming off the Thursday game. So they get to go from the New England game on that Thursday in week 13 into a home game against the Jets in week 14. I really like that. That's a nice little one. So the fact that the bye's in week 7, but then you get that 11-day stretch going into that game against the Jets in week 14 is nice to have that placed later in the year where the Thursday games are. And one other little piece that I picked up on, the days and the weeks where they have extra rest happen to fall in almost all of the biggest games of the year. So the Bills have extra rest going into the Tennessee game, which they've lost to 2 years in a row. Right. They have more rest than the Chiefs going into the Chiefs game. The Chiefs will be coming off Monday Night Football, and they'll be having one extra day versus them. They'll have a full bye week going into the Packers game on Sunday Night Football. Even the one West Coast trip that they have, it's the first week of the year, so they can leave early, get themselves out there, and then they have 11 days afterwards coming back. So none of the body clock things. So some of the travel tidbits and when they have extra rest at least fell as well as they could. And I went through who you would rank as the toughest opponents. The Bills have more rest than their opponent in all of them, except for maybe the Cincinnati game. Mm-hmm. That was a nice setup for it.
Yeah, the rest stuff, I think, legitimately matters. I think it's really the only thing you can look at this time of year and say, how can this schedule play out? I think when you talk about strength of schedule and basing on whatever it is, free agency, things like that, and trying to project who is this team going to be, I think to me, I lose all that. I have nothing to do with any of that stuff, because we see it every year, right? We're going to get to week 10 and some team that we're not expecting to be a little bit more difficult than they were is going to get hot, or some team that, especially in this AFC West where everybody thinks all these teams are going to be good, one of those teams is probably going to struggle or something like that. It could be a team like Kansas City that struggles and they're not as formidable as you think they're going to be. So there's always, with the strength of schedule stuff, I get real nervous of falling into that. But the rest and the net positives and negatives, that's a real thing in the NFL. And I don't have the data in front of me of how that plays out over a large sample size of what teams are winning. But I will guarantee you, every single coach and training staff in the NBA and the NFL is trying to get those extra 1 to 2 days rest on an opponent, because you're talking about the difference in an extra day of treatment, managing certain injuries where, hey, there's been tons of times where if a guy just had an extra day, he would have played in a game. Now you're going to get that extra day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it exactly right, in that how many players are on the borderline of being able to go
game time decision,
or are not available for your opponent because they had 1 day less. Those things add up.
The practices in, right?
Yeah, and that's a piece that Warren Sharp really talks about, significantly there. So, overall, I know some fans didn't love that a lot of the road games were early on, and that honestly, it's a pretty tough slate. You look at these first 7 teams that they play: the Rams, Tennessee, at Miami, which is maybe not the toughest team, but playing in Miami in September is never awesome.
Tougher game than Bills fans want to give it credit for.
Yeah. But at Baltimore, I think Baltimore coming back healthy. Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh, we'll see what they have there. But then Kansas City and Green Bay, when the worst teams are Pittsburgh and Miami in those first 7 games, that's a tough stretch. So we're going to know
Pittsburgh
real quick.
Is still going to be super good. Quarterback play probably can't get a whole lot worse than I'm not scared of their quarterbacks, but it can't be much worse than Roethlisberger was doing last year.
He was pretty close to worthless.
That could be a sneaky tough game. But here's the thing I will say, Greg, and this is the first time in my life, and we'll kind of get into this conversation probably for the next 3 months here, is this team and the way that this team is put together and the last 2 years, the things that they've been through, and if you break down all the different outcomes of games, from losing to a team like Jacksonville to blowing out teams like the Patriots in the playoffs, they've run the gamut of experience. And I look at this schedule and I see some tough games, but Greg, I don't Ron Beck here said, I could see maybe 4 losses. I can't see any losses. They will happen. I know losses are going to happen along this schedule somewhere. I think Ron's probably right. They might end up with 4 of them. I just can't see them. And that is the most fun part about the schedule. Because when I saw the opponents come out, my first thought was like, damn, that's going to be a tough grind. But I didn't know the team they were going to put together. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. Like they've improved from even where I thought they ended the year. So the way this team's put together, if they can stay healthy and play the way that we think they can play, the only way they're losing games on this schedule, I'll tell you right now, is if this team beats themselves. If you have a game like that Jacksonville game where you just get in your own way and you run over yourself and the wheels fall off in your game, that I don't think any team's going to come in, or we're going to go there, and I feel like they'll blow the doors off the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, and I know before you saw the schedule and your first reaction, I think, was accurate when you very eloquently said, the
Buffalo Bills going undefeated, and we're going to the Super Bowl. Yeah, that's.
I still feel the same.
So you're going to hear this from me, and you're going to cringe as soon as I say this, which makes me super excited. This is my Cobra Kai season for the Bills. It strike first, strike hard, no mercy. No Jacksonville games, no punt block losses to the Steelers in the opener. I want a dominant season where we lock up home field advantage and get ourselves extra rest at the end of the year. No finding yourself in week 12. No weird lulls in the middle of the season that we don't quite know what's going on. No stretches where, I'm not really sure how we didn't score a touchdown that game. No. We need to figure ourselves out and find ourselves early. Show that you are the dominant team. Show that you are the Super Bowl favorite, and ride that through the season. Building, I'm fine with improving, but none of the crazy, weird, wonky things that we saw last year where they couldn't quite figure out what was going on. Yeah. They need to get themselves figured out quickly, and they've obviously built the team to do it.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, they're going to have stretches that are going to be difficult.
Sure.
That's happened every year under the Sean McDermott era, where there were some stretches, even 2020, which I think was probably a little bit of a better season than last year, if we're just looking at the seasons as a whole. Yeah. That 2020 season, before that Cardinals game, going into that stretch, they had a little bit of a difficulty before they went on a big run after that Cardinals game. And so they're going to have those, but I think the thing that makes me feel good about that is the core of this team, the majority of this team, the parts that matter the most, have been through those experiences before. So even if they hit a patch in this where they lose some games that you expect that they shouldn't, last year, after that Jacksonville game, there's a couple games where I felt like, the wheels could come off this thing real quick.
They did that win-loss for 7 straight weeks and went 3-4 in a stretch.
If they back up to those, double losses, those are the types of things that derail seasons when you get back-to-back losses in an NFL season. So my point is, the fact that they've kind of gone through some of these experiences already make me feel good that if for anything they drop a game to Detroit, say they sleep on Detroit on Thanksgiving, they're tired, they ate too much turkey, whatever it is, lose that game. I don't think I'll have that same feeling like I did last year that, oh man, the wheels could fall off and they're not going to. I still think at the end of the day, they will get it right because of these experiences that they have gone through, and they know what it takes to get to where they're looking to go. And so those experiences in the past couple seasons really matter to me.
Yeah, and I do think that Sean McDermott and that coaching staff is going to harp on those games. They're going to show them that Jacksonville game and make them watch it again and say, "Hey, you want to, you want to think that you're the greatest thing ever, and that all you got to do is show up and show them your uniform." No, you don't. You have to show up and prove it and perform every single week to be able to put together the season we want.
You win that Jacksonville game, KC's playing in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Or so
that quarterback sneak slip against Tennessee, so many little, moments. We know the record. Yeah, and people talked about the regression from Josh Allen 2020 to 2021. There is a little bit of luck in those one-score games of how those things go, where there wasn't some horrible coaching mistake of Josh Allen slipping on that quarterback sneak. That wasn't Josh Allen making a boneheaded mistake. It was just bad luck. There was just something fluky that happened. Some of that will flip the other way this year in getting some of those things together. So you stack up
it better, or I'm coming back
11. The 11-12 dominant wins that they had, and then the horrible record of one-score games, that that should lean favorably into this year for what they have going on. Yeah. So one of the reasons that we feel so good is with some of the different portions of the offseason. We did all of our shows on the rookie draft class and everything that's there, but something that used to be a bigger topic that we would always have to worry about was, are they going to get everybody signed on time? Are they going to be able to get everybody in? And nowadays, it literally doesn't matter. The Bills all at once in one tweet, not one report had come out beforehand of anything else, of any leaks or anything like that. Boom. All 8 draft picks, 9 of the undrafted free agents, all announced all at once that all of them signed. They had the pictures of everybody signing, everything there. It was mostly all ado about nothing. You'd have 1 or 2 teams with a holdout every year. But now it's wonderful to just see it that, oh, good, everybody was taken care of and everybody was there to participate in rookie minicamp. So I love that this is now a complete nothing story nowadays.
Yeah, and normally these types of things, if you're talking about vets holding out, like I remember last year at this time, Starlet Tulele wasn't present for some of the stuff and people were freaking out like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like, these guys need to be there. Those things I don't care about. I don't care if vets, I don't care if Jordan Poyer's in the building for any of the upcoming stuff. Like, he's going to be fine come September. Those things I'm not worried about. Rookies, on the other hand, it used to drive me absolutely bonkers that you would have contract disputes where a rookie wouldn't get in immediately. And it's something that Sean McDermott talked about in his press conference here this past week, of that onboarding process. Greg, you work in big business, you work in corporate America, like onboarding super important when you have a draft class and you only really have, you and I will sit here and complain for the next 8 weeks about this like desert of time that we have as Bills content creators before football gets ramped up. In the NFL, it's a blink of an eye for these guys and what they have to get ready for training camp, and especially the rookie transition of being focused on the combine and senior bowls and all these things to get yourself ready to be drafted. And now you're transitioning back to football with all new language, new playbook, learning new parts of your position, to be able to just get in, get all this other stuff out of the way, because rookies come in, they have to work with the player development people, and they have the rookie symposiums and all these things that aren't football related that they have to get through and onboard it in before they even get in the classroom. And so getting all this taken care of, getting everybody signed, I like this new way that the NFL is doing business, where you don't have this for rookies, because I do think it used to hurt them. And now you get everybody in and they're solely focused on football. And if you're drafting the type of players that the Bills are, with the type of DNA that they have, they're able to take the ball and run with that, because that's the kind of guys you're bringing in.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's just the exact way that you give yourself that little edge, just a little bit, to be able to get those guys up and running, ready to go, no additional complications or difficulties. And I think that's a really, every little bit you can go in that direction helps. And, obviously not a lot of news out of the rookie minicamp, but the fact that everybody came out healthy, that's the most important part of every single thing that comes up here, whether it's rookie minicamp, OTAs, training camp, everything that goes into it. The element is making sure people stay healthy and that the guys who are supposed to look good do. And that's what happened. We got some positive reports about how smooth Kerry Elam looked, how prepared he was, how hard he was already working, how great Khalil Shakir's footwork was, how much James Cook's speed translated on the field. Those are exactly what you want to hear. Now, they should look good. They're going up against tryout players or UDFAs, but that's all you can do is show up, stay healthy, and look like you're supposed to be the better player, and the key players did. So that's all I can ask in these settings.
Yeah, this time of year, really through training camp, but training camp starts to become a little bit more because you have fans there, people can see it. But this time of year and OTAs and all that, this is PR heaven, right? Yeah. Like, the team controls pretty much everything that you're seeing and the access that you're getting, and it all should look good, and we should get everybody excited. So for it to be status quo, PR, everything's fantastic, all the guys we drafted look exactly like we thought they would, that's a plus. What you don't want is what's happening in New England, where people are like, you got Joe Judge coming out and saying like, hey, nobody is actually calling the plays. We're all just kind of working collaboratively and nobody really knows what's going on. And then you're hearing that the players and like people in the past, like, that's the type of stuff during an OTA process where you should be in total control of the narrative of your team, and the team's totally dysfunctional, crumbling. So the Bills are doing everything right. This is what the Patriots did for years. And now the Patriots look a little bit like the Bills, where it's like, even in this part of the season, where your team should be able to control the narrative and have all the PR and just say, yeah, no, everything's great. This is going to be a great season. It's still fumbling your way. So at least the boring, like, oh, okay, yeah, everybody's great. I'll live with that every single day versus what they're dealing with.
100%. That's the easy stuff.
Yeah.
So now this has happened to me. I'm not even exaggerating or doing this for effect for the show. On more than one occasion, it's been at least twice, I've literally had the moment of, oh, I forgot we signed Von Miller. That's awesome. And it's been such a fun way to go about that. So one of the pieces we're going to go through, you had a great idea for one of the things to talk about was as we went into the offseason, we talked about our Lofton exercise and which position groups we were really confident in and which ones, the definition of what you go through is, who can you win because of, who, can you win with, and who do you need better. And, we're not going to go through every position group again, but maybe the ones that materially changed from the additions that came up in whether it's the draft picks we just showed or nice free agent signings like a Von Miller or Roger Saffold. So I'll let you kind of start here. What were some of the positions that, really shifted or pivoted in your mind to a greater comfort level?
Well, so I had two of those moments. I have not forgotten that we signed Von Miller. But I have on a couple occasions. I tweeted one out the other day. Like I totally forgot Case Keenum. I saw him at the softball, Micah Hyde softball charity event. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. We
got a nice backup quarterback. That's fun.
Yeah, and honestly, like that was one of those signings where, at the time, like Mitch Trubisky as a backup quarterback was one of the better backups in the league. And I don't know that they got better, but they definitely didn't get worse at the backup quarterback position, in my opinion. I think Case Keenum is one of the perfect examples of this is the kind of guy you want as a backup. So I think they at least netted out even because we had Trubisky, at least I did, as we can win with him and that type of, hey, if we need 2 to 3 games out of a guy, can you win? I think Keenum provides you that. I mean, he's as good as Baker Mayfield, so why can't he win us a couple games here?
Perform the same, and exactly like you said, when Mayfield went out, they won. He went 2-0. Yeah. Like that's exactly what I want. I want the fact that he can keep a good team going well and make up for the absence of our MVP quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other guy that I keep forgetting about is Jamison Crowder. Totally continue to forget about him. A lot of talk about Stephon Diggs, a lot of talk about Gabe Davis and this type of step that he can take. And
obviously, Isaiah McKenzie's a fan favorite, and a lot of fun. He's always every embedded video. You can tell why people like him so much. He's a really likable dude. Like he's funny. It's and
flashes and there's flashes of like what he can be. So I get that, but I mean, Crowder is one that I'm really excited about because I was a guy that not standing for Cole Beasley, but I think he had some left in the tank. He's a guy that was a productive piece, and I didn't see how an Isaiah McKenzie replaces that, right? And I didn't know where you find that replacement. I started looking to the draft, and what Cole Beasley does is hard to get a rookie to come in and do right away. And so Crowder coming in, like I don't know that you could get a better Cole Beasley replacement than Jamison Crowder. And it was one that during the free agent process, Greg, that I totally missed on. I didn't even really have him on my radar. And so for them to be able to get that in and sort of fill that Cole Beasley role, and then you have Shakir as well. So I feel like we liked that
now and later.
Yeah, we liked that room during the Lofton exercise, but I like it more now. Like I think that room improved a lot. Running back is probably another one, right? We had Breida, Tywan Jones, where we said we need better. Zach Moss, we need better. I don't know that James Cook is going to be a better running back, but I think he provides that thing that we wanted out of that position where I feel better. That's another position I feel better about. So at least on like the offensive side of the ball, those were the ones for me that really stood out from where we were. And obviously, we did this before free agency too, the offensive guard position.
Yeah, so that was one of the bigger ones for me.
Yeah, getting Saffold in is a really big one there. I still want to do more when we talk about free agency at this position, because there's a guy saying here that I'm looking at, Darrell Williams was a guy that I did say you could win with, but I think getting Saffold in over there is not a huge advantage over maybe where he is in his career, but I think enough to say that improves this position overall.
And the combination of that and retaining Ryan Bates.
Right.
I think if you had just cycled that out and lost him, then I would have felt more uncomfortable with it. And you'll hear Darrell Williams' name here in a moment when we get to available free agents who are still out there. I agree. I'm exact same on each of the positions. One that we didn't.
OJ Howard. I missed OJ Howard.
So that was the one where at tight end, I still want to see one more. And there's the same thing. I love what we did. Replacing Beasley, but we didn't add anyone at the outside receiver spot. I think that's maybe a little something. I love that we, in my opinion, upgraded fairly significantly at tight end 2 by adding OJ Howard. I think if we're going to be playing more tight end, I almost want one more. And at running back, I think we got better because I think Duke Johnson is actually better than Matt Breida by a little bit.
True.
And then we didn't have a James Cook, and now we have a James Cook. So we still have Singletary, we still have Moss. Duke Johnson was a slight upgrade to at least maybe be game day active if he was there. And then we all of a sudden add James Cook, who's even better than him and the younger, faster version of it. So I really like that setup. In the end, I agree. At least Case Keenum was as good of what we needed for Trubisky as what we had before.
Yeah.
Flipping to the defense side, what do you have there?
Yeah, I mean, Von Miller, right? Like where this whole thing started, right? We're going through the defensive edge, at least how I had it, right? We can win with Greg Rousseau. You can win with Jerry Hughes. Could win with Mario Addison. We need better than Epinesa. Can win with Basham and can win with Lobato, which is fine, right? Like that was fine. But now you got a guy that
domino
can
effect.
win, like just not only can win games for you, and that is what you need at all the top primary positions, right? You need a quarterback that can win games for you. You need an edge rusher that can win games for you. You need a defensive back that can win games for you, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think that's where they got. They hit it out of the park there. And then you add Daquan Jones. Like you get that type of player you need on the interior defensive line. We were talking about that. We had Ed Oliver. He can win games for us is what I had. And I think that he still can. But then everything else was we can win with him. We need better. And I even think, Star Lotulelei I had as you can win games with him, but that was Star Lotulelei at the first half of the season, right? Not the Star Lotulelei we saw at the second half of the season, where I don't think Jones is going to come in and be a game wrecker. I think he's going to give you that Star Lotulelei sort of at the top half of that season, but more consistently, and give the other guys around him that ability. So I think you improve there as well. Plus Tim Settle, I know that's a guy that you love a lot. That just adds to that rotation. You get Vernon Butler out of here. Hated to see losing Harrison Phillips, but adding those guys made it a lot more manageable. You know what I mean? A lot more palatable. I don't think I'd hate to see Zimmer come back. Justin Zimmer was on the team last year. Like I wouldn't hate him coming back.
If he recovers, I'd love to have him work his way back from PUP. Yeah. Even a moment on the practice squad.
My prince Emily will be the new Justin Zimmer. So I don't know. We'll see. And then let's obviously we got to talk about Elam. Adding Elam. And losing, as much as I hate to say it, when you add an athletic freak like Elam and you lose a Levi Wallace, that is a plus addition. I don't know how Elam will play. I don't know if he'll be as good as Levi Wallace was, where Levi left at the point in his career and Elam coming in. There might be some drop off for a little bit, but the athleticism and the traits that you're going to bank on that being better. And I think you have a guy that in Trey White who's going to come back that can win games for you. I do think Elam can. Probably not this year, but I think he can get to the point where you have two guys that can win games for you. And to me, that's a home run. I've been pounding the table for a long time that Levi's good enough to be your cornerback too. There's not a lot of teams that have two great cornerback ones on their team. Like there's usually clear drop off. There's a chance. I'm not saying he's going to get there, but there's a chance that Elam could get to that level of being the legitimate cornerback one for other teams in his first 4 or 5 years here in Buffalo.
Oh yeah, and so you're spot on with each of them. I think that even if early on we just get the rookie ups and downs of Kyer Elam is just as good as Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson was, that's great. That we already know that's a good defense.
On the defense.
Yeah,
cool.
And then we know the potential beyond there, and that ideally that late run where he starts to figure things out and can really settle in down the stretch, that's what you really want. Yeah. I like the athletic depth at linebacker and what that gives. I don't think we upgraded there per se, but I think that they gave themselves more flexibility. I've been excited to see all the breakdowns that Eric's done and some of the things I've seen on the capabilities of Terrell Bernard, that I don't think that's some huge improvement, but at least we've continued to stay that you can with that linebacker group.
And I think that the special teams drop off won't be. I think he's going to step right into special teams, which is cool.
100%. And then you get into the front four, where I'm really excited, because you went from, hey, I think we have a whole bunch of pretty good, to now we have an elite game wrecker,
right?
And everybody else now gets to have. We didn't have anyone besides Ed Oliver was consistently highest on the double team rate metrics. We didn't have anybody that was constantly, we have to game plan around that guy. So they could kind of shift where protections were. They could put more guys out into the pass route. They could be able to, change around who was going to get the double team or get the extra protection. Now, Gregory Rousseau in his second year with a full offseason of NFL training and a full offseason of watching Von Miller, he's never going to get double teamed. And he's going to have Ed Oliver in there as well. So then Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones is the perfect definition of a guy you can win with. You want to know why I know that? Because I can't explain how the hell Tennessee kept winning. And you want to know why it is? They had a whole bunch of Daquan Jones type guys who were guys you can win with, who were good in their role. He's going to be really good in this role. You and I were both pretty vocal about not wanting to pay Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson the amount of money they got when together they got $65 million from the Cardinals and the Dolphins. But you want to know what I really like them as? As a fourth defensive tackle and a fifth defensive end. That's a really nice option to be able to have. So the trickle-down effect of what Von Miller's addition does to the progression of the younger DNs with the safety net of a Shaq Lawson being able to rotate in, and then Ed Oliver having guys around him who are legit powerful one-techs to take some of that off, that you can't just double-team him because Daquan Jones will throw single blocks around like nothing. That combination of what that does, we've already heard people talk about what that can do to free up Milano and Edmonds. Not, neither of them are great at getting off blocks all the time. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not going to be able to get blocked all that often. I love that combination. I do think that we added a guy that can win games for us, multiple guys that you can win with, and that potential is really exciting when you already had Ed Oliver and Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds, Trey White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, all those kind of players. That's an exciting combination.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is what I'm saying when we're looking back at this and looking at that schedule, like, I'm looking at my chops, right? Like, to see this team, because I do think they improved at the most important spots that you need to improve your football team at. And then last but not least, maybe one of the most important spots to improve in the offseason, I'll let you take this one. We had, special teams. I know we had Tyler Bass. We all loved him, guy that can win games for you. But at punter, we said we needed better. Did we get better at punter?
We did get better at punter because every NFL human is better than Matt Hawk. But we got Matt Araiza. Going to be really excited to see. He's got work to do. I like the fact that they've really dialed back the expectations. Said, hey, hold on here. Let's give him time to get going. I actually like the improvements in special teams across the board because I think Khalil Shakir was a nice add for special teams. I think he's going to be a rock solid punt returner on day one. I think that I like the idea of, I want to credit Armand Joe Marino. I like the idea of Isaiah McKenzie as the kick returner and Khalil Shakir as the punt returner, and you have a reason to keep them both game day active. I think that's a sneaky way to kind of play around with some things. I like the Matt Araiza upgrade. Obviously, I want to see them spend the entire offseason working with Reed Ferguson, working with Tyler Bass, getting those things in play, and honestly working with Matt Hawk on the placement idea of things, because we already know his ability to consistently punt and not have those short shanks. He already has that, but when Hawk was able to pin teams deep and use the accuracy, he was really good at it with the hang time piece and the coffin corner piece. So spend all the time you can learning that part of him. He has the God-given talent and ability and power in the leg. So soak up everything you can in the ability on holding and precision elements of punting that you can get from Hawk, and then we'll wish Hawk, on his merry way. So I think there were some nice upgrades there. And then some of the additions on the defensive side, I think guys like Christian Benford, guys like Terrell Bernard, that's their calling card from day one, is going to be stepping right into special teams and pushing things of where they're going to go. So that's their best route to the roster. I think special teams got a nice boost being able to come into this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now you're paying Saran Neal to be Matthew Slater. Hopefully a boost in his production comes along with that as well.
So one last piece. I'm very greedy. So I mentioned on the offensive side. On the defensive side, there's even a couple other pieces. I won't hate if they bring in another, maybe pass rusher to compete and push those young guys in case we're not seeing the step forward we need in camp. I wouldn't mind another outside corner to be there as a safety net in case Trey White's not ready day one, or Kyrie Elam needs a little bit of time to develop. So let's go through some of the positions where there are some names still out in the free agent market and what the different pieces are that could be out there and who the best remaining ones are. Let's start with defense and then we'll go back to offense. So on the passer, both pass rush and cornerback, there's some names out there, and even more than normal in regular years. Let me throw some names at you on the pass rush side of it. Jason Pierre-Paul, Jadeveon Clowney, Carlos Dunlap. Those are the three at the higher end. Then Justin Houston, Tack McKinley, Carl Nassib. Those are guys that would be probably... So the first three, if we sign them, that means one of the other guys isn't making the roster. Those are guys who are going to make the roster. If Jason Pierre-Paul signs, Jadeveon Clowney signs, Carlos Dunlap signs, they're making or any roster they sign on. Justin Houston, Tack McKinley, Carl Nassib would more be competition to try to make the roster. Do any of those perk your ears up that would be worth maybe a cut-down day trade of a Boogie Basham or an AJ Epinesa or a Shaq Lawson?
No, not for me, because to me, it takes away from Gregory Rousseau's development and those snaps that I want for him. And I think he's earned them. I think he's good enough to be that second defensive end. And then I like the rotation. So if you're adding something, I want it to be somebody that's competing for those reps behind Rousseau and Miller and getting the third, fourth defensive end rotational reps. I'm all for bringing a guy in to compete there because I'm not stuck to AJ Epinesa. I can move on from AJ Epinesa all day. I can move on from Boogie Basham all day long. Like that. Fine players. I'm fine to keep them. I hope that they develop. I could totally move on from. I could move on from a Shaq Lawson. Like if he comes to camp and it's just not a thing, and it's like, hey, thanks for coming, Shaq, but be on your way. We got another guy. So in this room where I'm adding is probably not one of those big names because I don't think Jadeveon Clowney wants to come in and get limited reps behind a group. Maybe he's just a pass rush specialist with the injury. But
my one that could thread that needle in my mind is Jason Pierre-Paul, where I think pitching him on the idea of a 30-35% snap count, because one, Von Miller's going to play a lot, but he's only going to play 75-80% at the most. Like he's not going to be on the field every single play. There is going to be 20-25% when he's not on the field. The same thing, Gregory Rousseau is going to play more snaps, but it's probably 60-65%. There's still going to be a need for a prominent role. I hope that that's a huge step forward from AJ Epinesa or Carlos Basham, or that Shaq Lawson rekindles his former Buffalo form. But I think there is a spot, especially, I feel pretty good about our run defense with Rousseau, Lawson, and Basham. I feel pretty good about that side of it. And Von Miller's actually a very good run defender. So I'm not worried about there. But on the third and longs, every once in a while, I wouldn't mind having a changeup of Jason Pierre-Paul to be opposite Von Miller and to be that extra guy and to just kind of save him for the playoffs and those pieces there. And he's the one that I think you could pitch the role, the contract, and the stretch run of a playoff team. I think Clowney's still going to want money, and I don't know that those other guys bring that. Carlos Dunlap is basically just another version of Gregory Rousseau, or what we want Shaq Lawson or Basham to be, that bigger, strong side run defensive end. So JPP was the one that I could see maybe checking those boxes.
Yeah, I'm not in love with him at this point in his career. I think you can get that production from guys that you've got. I don't know how much he has left in the tank. I didn't pay a lot of attention to all Bucs football, but he didn't stand out to me when I did watch any Bucs football last year. I don't know if that was a product of just their team and some of the stuff that I don't know about was going on there. If he's just hitting that wall at, what is he? He's got to be 34.
33. Yeah, it'd be 33. Yeah.
Okay. So he's getting up there. He could hit the wall at any time. Same with the J Hughes. So yeah, I mean, sure. If they think there's some production left and you get him into the building and can tell that there's production left, sure. And he wants to take that role, I'm all for upgrading there. But I'm also cool rolling where they're at.
Yeah. That one I'm more comfortable with. Here's another one that I'll throw at you. Do you think we need another outside veteran corner or a versatile corner who could be the backup to Taron Johnson if we need, the insurance policy for Trey White if he's not ready, a little bit of a backup plan for Kaiir Elam. Let me throw some names at you. The versatile guys would be a Chris Harris or a Kyle Fuller who could do inside or outside. The veteran outside guy would be Xavier Rhodes, AJ Boye, Janoris Jenkins, Kevin King, or always available Joe Hayden. I do like the idea of adding a veteran there. And again, the same idea. I'm thinking of the sales pitch to the player who would want the role that, hey, you might not play a ton. You want the insurance just in case. I do kind of think AJ Boye or Joe Hayden check a fair amount of those boxes that, just in case we need them. They're a veteran in the room. They could help with the mentoring of Kaiir Elam and could step in a spot. I don't know that there are any of those guys. Well, Chris Harris and Kyle Fuller at least had moments. The rest of them are getting older. To that way, Harris is getting older too. I don't know how much better they are than Dane Jackson, but it would make me feel better to add one more.
I'm torn on this one because I don't love the idea of like just adding a Joe Hayden and an aging guy. I get why we would want to do that. I have belief that they're going to have Elam ready. I don't know that we need a mentor for Elam in that room.
Certainly sounds like he's already pretty darn mature.
He's mature. I think Trey White's that leader in that room. At this point, I think he's that veteran.
Trey's with 27.
Yeah, he does everything the right way. You don't get to be a captain and wear number 1 at LSU. I think it's number 1 that he wore, right?
No, their famous number is
what is it?
17 is. Darn it. People are going to yell at me. They have the famous number that, like,
the famous number, yes.
Everybody gets to wear, like, their thing is
their captain.
Yeah.
I guess they wear. Yeah. So anyway, you don't get that unless you do things the right way. He does things the right way. So I don't need the veteran for mentorship of Elam. I feel good there. What I need it for is a security blanket, like you said. Like if Elam is just not ready.
18 is the big number at LSU.
Yes.
That's the number that, like, is their locker room leader
those
number.
Trey White graphics from back then. So with that said, and I'm looking at this list, what I would maybe take a flyer on, at least get him into camp, not a promised roster spot, is a Kevin King. Like traitsy dude that just has not been able to put it together at the NFL level. Can your coaching get out whatever was inside of him that made other scouts, or maybe the Bills don't even look at him in that way. But if I'm looking at a guy, it's, hey, how do we resurrect some career here? And he's still young enough where if you resurrect that career, you have a legitimate asset on your hands that could go get a deal somewhere else and you can play that comp bingo, where these other guys are kind of just like, hey, come latch on for a Super Bowl run. It feels a lot like what I wanted last year out of Richard Sherman, but then when you go look at what Richard Sherman produced at Tampa Bay, like that's kind of the pile we're picking through here, where guys, you're not going to get the versions that match the names of these guys. You're not going to get the Joe Hayden that you saw play with the Browns. You're not going to get the AJ Bouye you saw play with the Jaguars. Like those names sound good. You're not going to end up with that player.
Yeah. So let's flip over to the other side of the ball. Again, I'm very greedy. So we'll go through.
I do have one more. I would add.
Okay.
It would be hard for me to do, but I couldn't do a segment with him sitting out there. A Linval Joseph would be hard for me to not still add at this point. Don't see a spot for him. There's no.
Akeem Hicks is still out there too. I saw him too.
Out there, but I've wanted Linval Joseph for so long. He's just still sitting there. It's crazy to me. But yeah, no, continue to the offense.
I agree. I almost wish they had have waited on that Jordan Phillips spot and had that extra, because
on Phillips,
because man, adding a guy like Akeem Hicks or Linval Joseph would have been super fun. But so we'll start and work our way up from least sexy to the most fun position to talk about. Tight end 3. There were 2 names that I thought were actual potential. I know right now we talked about in our UDFA show with our man Damon over at Draft Diamonds why Jalen Weidermeyer has such a legit shot, because it's just him and him versus Tommy Sweeney for tight end 3. We know they kicked the tires on Kyle Rudolph before. He is 32. I don't know what he has left in the tank. I also don't know exactly how much was, by the time he was healthy last year, it was the Giants and their season was going down the tubes. Yeah. So I'm not going to judge that, because the year before in Minnesota, he was still reasonably legit. So he was there. And then the guy out of Tennessee, Michael Pruitt, is like the kind of versatile tight end 3 blocking guy who can catch the ball a little bit. That again isn't special, but probably is a slight upgrade to Tommy Sweeney. Those are the only two names that, I don't think they're going to
So
say
you didn't have
Gronk.
Gronk because I had Gronk as my number one tight end 3. No.
I don't get me wrong. If Gronk decides he wants to come back and doesn't want to go back to Tampa, come on aboard, buddy. But yeah, I think a guy, again, the kind of players we could pitch on the role that's available to come be a part of a championship caliber team. I could see a Kyle Rudolph or a Michael Pruitt as a slight bump over Tommy Sweeney and Jalen Weidemeyer, although maybe the potential for Weidemeyer is worth it.
Yeah, I feel like this one for me is similar to kind of my view at edge of it's pushing snaps away or resources or whatever it is away from a young and developing tight end 3, whether that's Sweeney or Weidemeyer. I don't know who it's going to be, but I would rather go with youth here. I'm not totally out on Sweeney yet. He hasn't done anything to make me feel like he's earned that job or that job's his.
I'm totally out.
Are you totally out on it?
I'm all the way out.
All the way out on Sweeney, huh? It's a position that develops so slowly. He's had some weird hiccups in his career and hasn't been able to get on the field. Like there's a chance that he could be exactly what you want out of a tight end 3, which is guy that can come in and block, give you some big jumbo set type stuff, and catch the ball when you need to. Right? Like
here's Doug Masters brought up here. Jesse James is another name that came in for a free agent visit 2 years ago.
An interest of Buffalo, But I don't know. I'd rather keep this to a young developing player. I like this idea of, hey, let's get Knox extended. First of all, let's figure that out so we know tight end 1 is locked up. I'd love to do that. I'm cool with rotating tight end 2 with OJ Howard like guys that come in, and hopefully in the way this works out is OJ Howard has a fantastic season with the Buffalo Bills on the way to a championship, and then he goes and signs a huge deal somewhere else, and we wish him the most success. And they continue to do that. And then tight end 3 is sort of like this, hey, we're looking for a real specific type of player that we're going to develop in-house and get on here. He's going to be a special teamer a little bit and come in a pinch type of guy. So I'd rather give that role to one of these guys that's already on the roster.
So is it completely crazy that is Tommy Doyle like just a blocking tight end?
Maybe.
You might be. I brought it up before that I do think David Quessenberry is going to push Doyle. I mean, he started 17 games at right tackle for the number 1 seed Titans. We know that Doyle came in as that 6th lineman before. I absolutely think that's going to be Quessenberry this year. When they go heavy sets, he's such a good run blocker, and he did that role. Like, that's such an easy fit for Quessenberry there. I'm curious, Tommy Doyle was an elite athlete there. Maybe that's a little sliver or something here. But yeah, that's a little spot that I think is interesting. Here's another one with a name you already mentioned tonight. Some of the guys at interior offensive line. 2 names we're familiar with. Darrell Williams, who we had just let go just a couple weeks ago. Quentin Spain, former Buffalo Bill. I have a feeling
I'm out on Spain, bro.
I have a feeling Quentin Spain's out on coming back to Buffalo as well.
I have a feeling Sean McDermott's out on.
Yeah, I'm almost 100% Sean McDermott's out. I just brought that one up for the laugh of the name. But 2 others that I think are actually feasible. Eric Flowers and Michael Schofield are both guys that I think are upgrades over Cody Ford or over an injured Ike Bacher. We don't know what we're getting back in Ike Bacher.
Maybe not even getting him back.
If we're getting him back, I don't know a lot about Greg Mance, and I'm sure he's fine.
It seems like Brian Winters to me.
Yeah, correct. I don't know that I ever want to see him in a game. I really like the idea of Darrell Williams coming back. And that I know it's not easy when the team already released you and ate some dead money and you didn't really get anything out on the market, and you're coming back to probably not play short of an injury. But if you told me that Darrell Williams could be the swing tackle who could fill in for either guy and was the backup at guard to be able to go in if we needed, because he knows, our offensive system, he's already comfortable in the locker room, man, I would be super okay with that. So Darrell Williams might be. We'll get to one more position here where I might have a little bit of a wish list, but he might be my highest wish list of any of the names we talk about here that I really would like for him to come out of this group.
Yeah, when you texted me, actually, this was a last-minute exercise that Greg was like, hey, let's talk about the remaining free agents we want to grab. And honestly, the first thing that came to my mind was, one, the position that I'm still the most upset about is interior offensive line that I feel like Brandon Beane just, for some reason, has not done it to the way that I want. Like, I'm really happy across the board with how he's put this roster together. I'm happy with the improvements they got on the interior offensive line. I would just like better depth, like you said. And so, yeah, bringing back Darrell Williams was the first thing that popped in my mind. Like, can you convince him to come back in that role? Another guy that I had in that free agency target window was Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who's not a very good offensive line, but I think he's a journeyman. I think he's probably average, a journeyman average.
He's a Feliciano. Like he's passable when he starts, but you feel pretty good about it when he's your backup.
Yeah, and he's played in some meaningful football games. Like that's a guy that I feel better than Mance right now. I feel like if you swap those two out, I feel like that would be a net improvement.
Ron said that Duvernay-Tardif may have mentioned about retiring. I don't know. I hadn't heard that.
I haven't heard. He's pretty young still, so that'd be surprising.
Also,
he's a doctor. So
also someone who has a lot more post-football options than most players when he's literally a McGill-educated doctor.
Yeah.
But
I would retire too. But
yeah.
Guys like that are journeyman, below average tight end, or interior offensive lineman, like I would be happy if they go into camp with like 12, 13 of these interior offensive linemen and let them sort it out to get to wherever you can.
We need 15 come training camp time. So whatever.
Yeah.
All right. One last one. This is a sexy one. I'm going to make the pitch. This isn't just for fun and for fantasy football and for the nonsense of it.
I don't believe you.
We don't have any depth at outside receiver. Like it literally right now, if something happened to Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis, I'm not talking about for the year, if they just miss, a 3-game stretch, who's playing outside wide receiver?
Yeah. I don't appreciate the
I don't know.
Insult that you just laid out in front of me. So I'm going to pretend like you didn't say it. You said it in a nicer way. But continue.
So I mean, you're right. It would be Jake Kumaro as our starting outside wide receiver. Because the one
Shakir
thing
can play on the outside.
you're right. Maybe Shakir's ready early enough that he can play outside. And we talked about it. Yes, and that it was 62 or 63% slot reps, which means 37% outside, which is a legitimate number. Yeah. I would still feel better having one more outside wide receiver in the running. And this, again, you're talking about who's wanting to sign for the number of reps that would be available. You're fighting McKenzie, Shakir, Marcus Stevenson, Jake Kumaro, who plays a lot of special teams. So the kind of names that are here, it is going to be someone like a Will Fuller, who has not been able to stay healthy. Someone like a Julio Jones, who also hasn't been able to stay healthy, but has been actually still very productive when on the field. If anybody doesn't remember the ball bouncing off of Micah Hyde's helmet in the 65-yard catch he had against the Bills last year when he was in Tennessee, when he played, he was still good. Steve, bring it up here. Do we try to lure Emmanuel Sanders back for one more season? He seems pretty darn good at this media thing, so I don't think it's him. T.Y. Hilton was another name that was floating out there. Does he have one more year? And if he has one more year, is it in Indianapolis? And honestly, the one that I want to sell myself on because of he could continue to rehab, be in the physically unable to perform list, and be there down the stretch in the end of the season is Von Miller calling up Odell Beckham Jr. and having that as another weapon down the stretch into the playoffs for defenses to worry about. I don't know. I think many of those guys probably want a more prominent role than the Bills are going to offer. Yeah. I don't know if the money would work with any of them, but I want someone in that realm. I want one more outside wide receiver.
Sure. Odell, to me, sounds fun. If he's healthy.
A lot of risk. Lots of questions.
Well, assume he's healthy.
Yeah, okay.
Right. You're playing him over Gabe Davis. A healthy Odell Beckham is starting.
You'd certainly play
Gabe Davis.
A lot more 10 personnel, or he'd play in the slot. It would be over Jamison Crowder some. It would be bumping some
he would
guys.
Get the second most reps next to Stephon Diggs if healthy.
That's very possible. Very possible.
When he's healthy, he's still shown in LA that you want to give him the ball, he can still produce.
He was on pace to be the Super Bowl MVP. Correct. Like he was having an elite Super Bowl before he blew out his knee.
Yeah. And if we assume they can get back to there, that's and again, so let's do it. Let's go all in and win a title. But there's going to be some people that have some hurt feelings when Gabe Davis's snap count isn't what people are anticipating it would be because he would bring in a Odell. That would be the one type of scenario that I would be willing to bring in a veteran free agent and take that chance on that type of, hey, we're going to limit the snap counts of a developing player to put Stephon Diggs, Beckham, and Crowder out there and see what happens.
So, and obviously a lot. I actually think OBJ is going to wait and not sign.
Yeah.
And so
That's
that
the
one,
move.
he
Wait,
knows
really,
he's ready, and then just wait and see who needs a receiver in a
pick a
prominent role
contender.
to pick the contender who had a receiver go down or
Packers.
needs that
It'll be
second
the
guy.
Packers.
And a Packers situation would make a ton of sense. Honestly, it would make a ton of sense. But those are the kind of names that are out there.
Sure.
And I do say,
What about Julio Jones? Are you in on Julio, or are you out on Julio?
So
Same idea, right? Like massage injuries and.
I mean, the fact that you could kind of use him in a limited capacity and try to keep him healthy for the playoffs, I could maybe talk myself into it. And I will say, when he was on the field, he was still exceptional. Like, he was still ridiculously good. He just can't stay on the field all the time anymore. So, last year, when he was playing for Tennessee, he was still playing good
Come
football.
Be the best version of yourself in our health facilities.
So it's
Make that health facility earn its money.
I would like to see one more. That's the one of the spots over there. So if we, in a serious note, I don't know that we're going to add a pass rusher. I could see it, but I don't think that's realistic.
Go
ahead.
I got one for you.
Okay.
While we're throwing out some crazy scenarios, anything this summer happens in the slot, injury-wise, something like that, would you bring Cole Beasley back in the same Darrell Williams realm where, hey, we weren't able to come to some agreement, we'd love to bring you back. Say Jamison Crowder doesn't make it through camp, or something happens with a rookie, or whatever it is. Scenario, Isaiah McKenzie, would you do it?
So, one, in a vacuum, yes, absolutely. I would have been fine with Beasley coming back. That one spot, there's so many layers of options right now between Crowder and Shakir and McKenzie that it would have to be something kind of odd of why it made sense for him to come back. But yes, I would not have had any issue with Beasley coming back. I'd be surprised if that scenario played out.
That ship's
but yeah, I'm much more open to him than, like, he's not in the Quentin Spain boat for me. Like, I'd be fine with him coming back.
Yeah.
So, out of any of these positions, Williams is probably the most realistic and probably the one I want the most. I still want kind of a versatile corner to throw in the mix. I don't think the tight ends that are available really matter over Sweeney or Weidermeyer. The same thing, I don't know if anybody like Pierre-Paul has enough left in the tank to make it matter over just hoping we see a step forward from Epinesa or a big second-year step from Carlos Basham. Or heck, maybe Gregory Rousseau just becomes a guy that needs to play 75% of snaps because he's a monster. Yeah. Maybe it's the same
or maybe
likelihood of that happening.
Anthony gets what he wants and Jermaine Edmonds moves to edge and he's a dominant edge defender.
Mad at you for even saying that out loud on this show.
And it answers everything.
So ultimately, I don't think we see any big moves here, but I could see a couple of those that we threw out there. If we see a corner, I do agree it's probably a Kevin King or a Joe Hayden even level. If we see a guard, I do think that a Williams reunion makes sense, but we'll see where it goes. They've already stacked the most talented roster in the NFL, so we're just being greedy here.
Yeah, honestly, what it's going to be is like a bunch of camp bodies, guys I've never heard of them. We have to go Google to find out who they are.
Yeah. Hold on, give me a minute. Let me find out who. Like when Greg Mance signed, I was like, I didn't know that was a human in the NFL.
Greg
I didn't
Mance
know he was a player.
6 foot.
Yeah. I'm like, hold on, give me a minute. Let me go find out who this person is. I was not familiar with that human.
Yeah, and we're going to get a lot of that, but even at a worse level, probably just to fill out this roster for camp. I think this roster's pretty set. Unless anything crazy happens where a guy becomes available or some trade goes down.
If I understand correctly right now, they are at 87. There are 87 players on the roster, so they can add 3 more. Right. And we've actually seen a couple times in the last couple of years, they haven't gone all the way to 90 just on principle. They haven't done it just because, we can add a couple more. Unless they think somebody has a shot, they haven't done that.
There's no need. Yeah, Sean McDermott said we don't need Sean McDermott's out here running around trying. Like, you don't have to have all those spots.
Crazy try-hard guys who might end up hurting somebody.
Yeah, and there's an annoying thing. There's just probably some flexibility in not having to go through the process of cutting some of those guys at the bottom of the roster when things are shaking out throughout the summer. Like, all those bottom pieces are going to move all summer long. Bean's going to scoop up guys from other teams. He's going to cut guys from his team like that. He loves tinkering with the bottom of his roster all summer long. So who cares where it's at right now? I don't know that it gets to the full 90, but it's not nothing. I can't see them adding anything that's going to get me more excited than I already am about this roster.
So, with that said, guys, this is going to be kind of our last show on the off-season reactions of things like that, and we're now going to pivot over. Obviously, we'll still react to any news that happens throughout, whether it's something coming out from mandatory OTAs or the minicamp, or
maybe some extensions.
It's a possibility. But we'll start to build our structure for our position previews as we go through. We're going to do a full breakdown of every position group through the rest of the roster. We're going to go through new additions, guys who stayed, opportunities for improvement, who's coming up towards the end of their career, who's a extension candidate, who's a cut candidate, who's a cut down day trade candidate, all the different pieces that are out there. We're going to help you get educated on every single piece of this roster. And this is honestly a really exciting time to be able to do that. If you have some friends who are hearing all the buzz about this team and getting excited but want to know a little bit more and haven't been as plugged in into what's going on, this is the series for them to be able to go through, learn about everything else that's going on, and we're going to be here for you, breaking each of those down from here all the way through training camp. It's something definitely to be excited about, and make sure you're checking out all the guys across the roster. The shows are doing a great job, Air Raid Hour and Disguise Coverage and Going Deep, the guys that swapped with us tonight going on Wednesday night. Big shout out to Kevin and Mike being able to help us out there, and we love the chemistry that's going on with our guys over there with Kyle and David and everything they're doing. So a lot of good stuff. Make sure you're checking out. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. What do you have for the people, Aaron?
Yeah, man, you can find me. We'll be back on Wednesday nights here. Going back next week, you can find Greg and I here every Wednesday night, just keeping you going through this off season. You can find me on Twitter at Aaron Quinn 716. And just again, really to close out the show, terrible week here in Buffalo. I hope that we were somewhat of a distraction for some people here this week to get back to talking about the Bills, which we're super excited about. But just my heart is with the city right now this week here. We're coming up on a week since the shooting took place, and just my heart is with this whole city and the whole area, and I hope that the healing starts to happen here this week and that it's not forgotten in the news cycle. I know that a lot of the times we say, whatever city strong or whatever school strong that a horrible thing happened at, and I hope that we don't lose this momentum that we have here in the city of people coming together and caring for each other and getting food where it needs to be and getting people where they need to be, and just sort of that type of thing where you hear about the city of good neighbors, and it was on full display here this week after that tragedy. And I hope that that type of love and caring for each other just continues on, and that nobody ever feels the way those people felt last week of scared and feeling hated. I hope that everyone just feels love and sends love. So that's where I'm at.
Absolutely. Hey, really well said. I don't even have anything to add. Just we're here for you. We're going to keep you guys with lots of fun things to talk about, and we hope that everyone finds each day the opportunity to feel a little bit better, to be able to know that we care about you and that lots of people share their love and attention towards you. So appreciate that. Thank you to everybody that's been putting in time, whether it's being able to help with the people who were impacted, whether it's bringing in food, helping the people who were impacted by the store being closed, all the different things that happened here. Such an outpouring from the community. It made me feel good to call Buffalo my hometown. So thank you to everybody. On behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.